hate waiting in line at the stinking post office. Me too. That's why we pimp for Stamps.com. Get yourself a trial at scottsigler.com/stamps, which includes a free digital postal scale and some freaking postage. What? And you can be a big swinger like me, using your printer and your computer to kick out real United States Post Office postage. Print that shiz, slap it on your package, oh yeah, and then leave it for your postal worker, and off you go to get your hundreds while the suckers stand in line. That's scottsigler.com/stamps, and now on with our story. Welcome to Fire is Orange, a short story compilation by #1 New York Times bestselling author Scott Sigler. 10 titillating tales to tantalize your thoughts. Hello, junkies. Holy crap, big news. My novel, Aliens Phalanx, is finally up for pre-order. What? You haven't seen the cover? You can see it in only one place right now, scottsigler.com/aliens-phalanx. Yes, aliens as in the movie Aliens, the James Cameron genius joint. Aliens, I have written a tie-in novel with that amazing franchise, which has influenced my career since the moment I saw it. Now, if you're a subscriber to my newsletter, my email newsletter, you were the first in the world to see the cover. Congratulations. What? You're not a subscriber? You royal human. Sign up at scottsigler.com/newsletter because you'll be the first in the world to see the next cover whenever that comes out. Also, new t-shirts in our store. We have brand new Galactic Football League shirts available for the Ruffland Ridgebacks of Dinolition and a brand new Ionath Kraken shirt. This one in gray with unheard of 3-color printing on it. Because that's how rich we are, man. We're printing 3 colors, black and orange and white on gray. It's probably the best looking Ionath Kraken shirt we have done yet. Both shirts were designed by Scott E. Pond, who is our company's go-to guy for all them graphics. Check him out at scottsigler.com/store. When you get there, click on the category T-shirts and have at it. Stick around after the episode, and I will tell you why one of those T-shirt models looks way different and far sexier than ever before. Now, it's time for our story. This story is called Splashing Contest, and it is a bellwether for me because it is my first ever pro fiction sale as a writer. First ever. I will cover that information in the author's notes, which run right before the story. I wrote this puppy a long time ago, long before school shootings tragically became such a common thing. Does this story age well? You will have to decide for yourself. Here we go with Splashing Contest. Author notes for Splashing Contest. While I had sold several role-playing game adventures and books way back in the late 1990s, I had yet to sell a short story. Splashing Contest changed that, becoming my first pro-fiction sale when it was published in Flesh and Blood issue number 2. It's hard to describe the thrill an author feels upon that first sale. You know you have a long way to go, but getting a check of any size for your work is a validation that is often years in the making. That single sale makes the dream real. Yes, you can do this. As for the story itself, bullies are the cigarette butts on the sandy beach of life. Many kids go through childhood torment. I'd always wondered what it would be like if retribution came not from a gun or parents or teachers or the police, but rather from powers beyond our realm of knowledge. Splashing Contest was a way to explore that concept. Now that I've been a pro writer for 2 decades, going back and seeing the actual words of that first sale are quite jarring. I had the usual reaction authors have, quote, "Someone paid for that?" end quote. The writing might not be as refined as my current tales, but the story itself, the "you got what was coming to you" tale of vengeance, and resonates as clearly as anything I would write today.
Splashing Contest. Scooter Savinkoff picked at a Band-Aid covering the back of his hand. Tiny drops of water, more falling dew than rain, peppered his grunge-laden Seattle Seahawks jacket, dampened his jeans, and matted his unkempt red hair to his slightly oversized head. "Can I see it again?" Scooter asked. "No," Danny Jerrigan answered. "Recess is half over. He might come at any second, and I don't want him seeing it and running away. We'll only get one chance at this." "I can't believe you're going to use it," Scooter said sullenly. "Do you want him to keep doing it?" Scooter said nothing, merely looked at the ground. Danny was the second smallest boy in the 6th grade. Scooter was the first, a good 2 inches shorter than Danny. The reins seemed to bounce off Danny's stylish haircut, which remained in place no matter what level of little kid intensity he achieved during play. He picked his nose deeply, scraped about with his fingernail, and came out with a sizable, crusted greenie. "That's a good 'un," Scooter observed. "Best one of the year, I bet." Danny wiped the booger on his pants. He wished he was home so he could wipe it on the bottom of his nightstand. He had 3 years' worth of dried boogers wiped under there, a big collection started during a fit of 3rd grade inspiration. He pulled his bent glasses from his face and tried to wipe the beaded rain from the lenses. He only managed to spread the water around. Drizzle covered his hands, his clothes, his face, covered everything. Usually did in Northwest Washington, where it seemingly rained 8 days a week. He put the glasses back on, but they hung askew from his nose, bent so many times that they could never again hold their original shape. The boys were unusually quiet. Scooter broke the uneasy silence. "I can't believe you stole it out of your dad's closet." "He tells my mom it's for our protection," Danny said. "She says she doesn't want it in the house, but he ignores her. He doesn't think I know about it." "Stealing's bad," Scooter said quietly. "I know," Danny said without emotion. "Lots of stuff in that closet, though. Dad keeps his Playboys in there, too." "Wow," Scooter said. "Can I look at them next time I come over?" "Sure. Next time my parents leave us home, I'll show you. You should see Miss October. She's got huge hoo-hoos." The lack of pre-adolescent giggles that usually accompanied any mention of women's body parts epitomized the boy's mood. Sullen, fearful, trepidatious. They sat on the edge of a soggy merry-go-round, galoshes-covered feet resting inches from a chocolate-brown mud puddle the size of a small car. The merry-go-round's waterlogged wood held only a few tenacious flakes of its original thick green paint. The bars, once painted a bright, cheerful yellow, now held only the color of lumpy rust. The wet wood, the flecks of green and the muted rust seemed to bend into the hazy gray that dominated the afternoon, gray that hung thick as mustard gas filling the trenches of World War II. Scooter picked up a pebble and tossed it in the puddle. It splashed into the water, sending out tiny ringlets to coast lazily toward the puddle's edge. "Knock it off," Danny said. "I just like to watch the rings is all," Scooter protested. His own glasses, the dirt-cheap black plastic frames some men used for safety glasses, were also drizzle-streaked. It made him look like a bug with multifaceted eyes. Most kids made fun of his frames, but his family couldn't afford anything better. A wad of grungy, once white athletic tape held the right temple onto the frames. The right temple was a slightly lighter black, a replacement cobbled together by an optometrist who'd run out of replacement arms for Scooter's cheap and oft-broken glasses. "Knock it off," Danny repeated. "You might screw it up." "How could I screw it up?" Scooter whined. "Beats me, but you might." Scooter said nothing for a while. His heels drew deep gouges in the muddy dirt and gravel surrounding the merry-go-round. Water filled the gouges, as if they were oozing sores on the skin of some huge golem. Scooter's nervousness grew by the second, as did Danny's. The sounds of children playing kickball filtered through the air, joining the drizzle's endless, dull patter. Both boys wished they were in the game, but it was too late to back away from the plan, and they both knew it. The merry-go-round was an oddity in the Dell Elementary playground. Most of the playground equipment sat close to the school. The jungle gym, the slide, the teeter-totters, everything. The merry-go-round, however, was on the nature trail, a concept pioneered by Principal Williams some 10 years ago, far beyond the memory of any student currently attending Dell. The nature trail ran through the woods behind the school. It was beautiful, walled in by towering, arrow-straight lodgepole pines and covered with fragrant bark laid fresh each spring. Principal Williams intended the trail as an educational resource for science-minded students. There was only one problem. None of the students used it. In fact, the only time anyone utilized the nature trail was during science class field trips. Few kids ventured that far from school, even during recess, and on a rainy day, no one came near the trail. It was deserted and far from the other kids, exactly what Danny wanted, far enough away to hide loud noises. Screams, for example. "Maybe he won't come at all," Scooter said with a combination of disappointment and hope. "He'll come," Danny said. "Look at it out here. Everything is soaking wet, just the way he likes it. He'll come. How's your nose?" Scooter unconsciously touched his still swollen nose. "Okay, I guess," he said. Earlier that morning, a well-aimed math book turned missile smashed Scooter's nose, drawing drops of blood and more than a few tears of familiar, frustrated rage. "How's your hand?" Scooter asked. "Still broken," Danny said, rubbing at the cast. "It throbs when it rains, don't know why." "That why you finally decided to stand up to him?" Danny thought for a moment. Was the broken hand the final straw? He and Scooter had both suffered so much humiliation since Dustin Myers had moved in halfway through last year, joining and instantly dominating the 5th grade class. It was difficult to say which incident pushed Danny's decision to get even. "Don't know," Danny said. "I've just had enough, that's all. He's evil, Scooter. And he gets bigger every day. I think if we don't do something soon, he might hurt us real bad." Scooter's head hung low, his shame for his tiny, frail body clinging to him like syrup to a pancake. Even if he wanted to fight back, it wouldn't make any difference. Scooter knew that, and so did Dustin. "Yeah," Scooter said. "I guess we got to do something." They sat and waited. Scooter checked his Power Rangers watch, the White Ranger, his favorite. 12:49 p.m. Only 11 minutes left in recess. He started to tell Danny time was running out, but stopped short when he saw Dustin Myers lumbering up the nature trail, feet kicking up loose bark, moving toward the merry-go-round. "You ready for this?" Danny asked. Scooter didn't like the tone in his best friend's voice, but he nodded anyway and said nothing. Dustin the Splasher Myers, the worst bully ever to sally forth from the Pine View Trailer Park, the biggest kid in the 6th grade. Everyone knew he should have actually been an 8th grader, but was held back twice, sauntered up with a smile on his lips and a glitter of little boy malice in his eyes. He stared at Danny. "I got your note, jackass," Dustin hissed. He had a cold voice, a deep voice, manly when compared to the other boys at Dell Elementary. "I'm surprised you'd call me those names when you know I'm going to beat the shit out of you." "And I'm surprised you can read it all, you trailer park loser," Danny said, his expression never changing. "Who do you think you are?" Anger flared in Dustin's face. Scooter flinched involuntarily, his eyes wide behind his battered, water-beaded glasses. He felt petrified, plan or no plan. He suddenly knew it wasn't going to work. Danny's little head game would fail, and Dustin would either plant both feet in the puddle and soak him with a splash, if he were lucky, or punch him in the nose and drag him through the puddle proper, which was far more familiar and far more likely. "You're just a couple of fags out here on the little kid toys," Dustin sneered. "You two touching each other's monkeys?" "Yeah, we learned by watching you and your dad," Danny said. Scooter gasped. Dustin's face scrunched into a mask of hate. "How do you want it this time, Jerrigan? You want me to kick you in the balls again, or do you want me to break your nose like I did to your little butt buddy there? I think I'll drag you in front of the other kids first so they can see what pussies you are." Dustin's tightly balled fists hung at his sides like loaded cannons, his shoulders hunched forward in a predatorial stance. Danny said nothing. Instead, he stood up and slid his foot across the ground, scraping the puddle's edge and kicking a thin sheet of water at Dustin. Dustin brought up his arm and turned his head, but the muddy water still splashed across his face and chest. He turned to face Danny, water dripping from his nose and murder roiling in his sixth-grade eyes. Scooter simply gasped, mouth hanging so far open raindrops hit his tongue. Danny had just splashed Dustin. In the limited world of Dustin Meyer's mind, there was no greater insult. Splashing was the trademark of Dustin's artful bullying. In the 5th grade, Dustin became famous for jumping feet first into a puddle, sending a well-targeted wave of water toward unsuspecting victims. It was one thing to be punched or pushed or threatened by a bully. It was quite another to sit through the rest of class soaking wet with soggy, cold underwear riding up your butt. Dustin knew this. He wasn't a standard bully, simply out to establish power. He wanted to humiliate people. He wanted fear. He needed it, like a drug. Then, in the summer following the 5th grade, Dustin went through a now legendary growth spurt. He'd already been the biggest kid in school even before he added 4 inches and gained 40 pounds. He could do anything he wanted to anyone he wanted to with no fear of retaliation. No one dared to rat him out for the endless playground tortures. Dustin had made it clear how he would deal with tattletales. He'd threatened to break fingers, and he'd shown several people the old switchblade he carried when not at Dell. With the growth spurt, his bullying took on new levels, including beatings that grew more and more severe. No matter what physical punishment he handed out, however, Dustin always finished off with a good old-fashioned dirty puddle drenching, leaving his crying, bleeding, humiliated victim with a cold, wet reminder for the rest of the day. Splashing was Dustin's calling card, his signature. For Danny to splash him was the ultimate affront to Dustin's royal standing as the cruel king of Dell Elementary. "You're dead, Jerrigan," Dustin said, water dripping from his face and cold violence dripping from his voice. "I'm going to break that other hand for you. But first, you're going to pay for getting me wet. You won't have a dry piece of clothing on you when you go back to class." Dustin took 2 fast steps forward and launched himself into the air with the patented form that had soaked Dell's school children 100 times over. He was simply the master of the splash, an aquatic artiste who could direct a sheet of water over 10 feet toward a dry and unwitting victim. Danny stood firm at the puddle's edge. With one double-foot splash, Dustin would soak the smaller boy. Dustin's thick body finished its arcing descent and his feet hit the water. A perfect wave splashed up, cascading over Danny, who ignored it and even smiled as the muddy water hit him like a big, cold slap. Dustin didn't notice his full splash victory a sheeting masterpiece of water that soaked Danny from head to toe in one fell swoop. Dustin didn't notice because his feet didn't stop. Still moving fast from the running jump, he slid into his waist. His arms automatically lashed out, splashing into the water but catching on some solid ground just beneath the surface, stopping him like a glob of oatmeal smacking against a wall. His eyes blinked away, mud kicked up by his landing. His mouth hung open, already gasping for air in an instinctive reaction to sudden cold. There he stopped, looking as if he'd waded into chest-deep water. "What the hell is this?" Panic etched his face. Scooter sat on the merry-go-round, utterly silent, his knees pulled tight against his chest. Danny remained standing at the puddle's edge, drenched, but smiling victoriously. "I told you I was going to get even," Danny said. "I even wrote you a note, dumb shit." "Get me out of here," Dustin screamed. "Come on, you guys, help me, this is really deep." "You have no idea how deep it is," Danny said. He reached behind his back and pulled free a small, leather-bound book. It fell open at an X-Files bookmark, a slight, rotten egg stench wafting up from the exposed, yellowish pages. Scooter rocked back and forth, silent tears gliding down his face. Danny had talked him into this, but he never figured it would be this scary. He just wanted the humiliation to stop. He just wanted to enjoy recess without looking over his shoulder every second, waiting for the next beating, the next soaking. "Curim crua Dionytiath advatum," Danny droned, reading from the book. One hand held the small leather book. In front of him, the other hand, rigid from the cast, reached up and out over the puddle, fingers outstretched. He looked like a soggy little preacher hurling a message to his congregation. "What are you doing?" Dustin's nose started to run. "Stop it and help me, guys, I'm stuck." "Duolo advantia fashul," Danny said. "Advantia fashul." Dustin's body jerked downward, and he let out a scream of surprise and fear. Only his head remained above the surface. He tilted his head back, trying to keep the muddy water out of his mouth. His eyes were wide and white with stark panic. Scooter rocked faster. He'd seen someone's body jerk underwater like that in a movie called Jaws, the one about the big shark. "Please!" Dustin screamed. "Danny! Scooter! Help me!" Scooter buried his head in his knees and kept rocking. Danny read a little more. "Advantia fashul." Dustin disappeared underwater with a jerk, and then was gone. A small burst of bubbles rippled the brown surface, making it look like boiling beef broth. Then nothing. Only slowly expanding ripples that hit the puddle's shore and died away. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of a school bell drifted across the large playground. "Well, I'll be darned," Danny said with a relieved laugh. "This book really does work. Come on, Scooter, we've got to go back to class." "What about him?" Scooter pointed to the puddle, still terrified beyond belief. He'd never imagined it would be so horrible, and he'd never imagined he could fear his best friend in the whole world. "Dustin?" "Well, Scooter, right about now I'd say class is the last of Dustin's worries. Hurry up, I don't want to be late." They dashed from the merry-go-round, heading for the school and giving the puddle a wide berth. Danny tucked the spellbook into his back pocket. Dustin, already gone from his mind as he plotted how to sneak the leather-bound pages back into his dad's closet without his parents noticing. After all, he knew stealing was bad.
That was Splashing Contest, my first ever professional sale over 2 decades ago. It is mind-boggling to think how far I have come since then. I mean, back then, hitting #1 New York Times bestseller status, it was just a dream for a small-town kid, a scrawny guy from Sheboygan with stars in his eyes. Who the hell am I kidding? With my giant swollen ego back then, I knew I would achieve #1 New York Times bestseller status. Narrator. He still has that giant swollen ego. Before the episode, I told you I would tell you why the new Empty Set t-shirt model is so dang sexy, so scintillatingly, smokingly sexy. Well, that is for two reasons. Number one, because I am said t-shirt model. And number two, I've lost 20 pounds, Jack, a few months ago while on multiple deadlines and just eating anything I wanted to because, food helped me get through the stress of these deadlines. I started to see pictures of myself playing on stage with my band, Evan Diamond in the Library. And I was like, woo, someone is swelling up like a leech latched onto a hemophiliac. And I said, something must be done. I said to myself, I do something every week, and I am the best at doing the something. Ask anyone, ask many people. They will tell you I'm the best at doing something. So on August 11th, I started adjusting my diet with help from a real girl herself, who really kind of just jumped in and said, if you want to eat better, we can help you do that. I set the goal of losing 2 pounds a week, and I used an app called Lose It, L-O-S-E-I-T, to set that goal. Lose It tracks what your weight loss goal is, how much you want to lose a week. If you enter your calories, it tracks those. It will also track your calories that you've burned through exercise. So I set my goal. It tells you how many calories you can have per day. I stayed under that limit day in and day out. And like math or something, I've consistently lost 2 pounds a week. And even though I went to Siglerfest in Las Vegas with 150 of my closest pals, and I gulped booze like a drunken fish that fell off the wagon and landed in a big vat of bourbon, I continued to lose weight. So here we are, 10 weeks later, more calories burned than brought in, and I am 20 pounds lighter than I was. This is the lightest I've weighed, I think, since early 2017. So I really started to pack it on since then. We'll see if I want to lose more. I haven't figured that out yet. But boom, 20 pounds gone. It seemed like a daunting task. Task achieved. It's mission accomplished is what it is. That is it for this week's podcast. We will be back next week with not one, but two funny short stories from the anthology Fire is Orange, which will be in stores very soon, I assure you. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week. Until then, I will talk to you all real soon. You have been listening to Fire is Orange, a short story compilation by #1 New York Times bestselling novelist Scott Sigler. Narrated by Scott Sigler, Ray Porter, and A. Kovacs. Produced by A. Kovacs. Engineered by Steve Rickyberg. Copyright 2019, Empty Set Entertainment. All rights reserved. For more information about the author, visit scottsigler.com. Theme music by the band Amps and Volts.